Hey everyone, welcome to a brand new video here on the channel. Today we're doing something quite a bit different. I'm going to be reviewing the new Mortal Kombat movie, kind of give the perspective of a dad who's loved the series for quite some time. But we also pull in my friend Reckless to help me review this, who is also a new dad and also a longtime fan of Mortal Kombat. So, yeah, stay tuned to see how we feel about this movie. If you like this video, go ahead and press that like button. Don't forget to subscribe, and let's get into the video. Alright, so, yeah, to me, the beginning was probably one of the better parts of the movie, just the whole setup between Sub-Zero and Scorpion. I especially liked how they did the different languages, but showed you what languages they were. I thought it added kind of a third dimension to what they could understand and what they couldn't. What did you think?
The opening scene was great. It was badass. They did a really good job setting, especially compared to that 90 whatever one, actually setting up some lore and kind of explaining that feud between the Shirai Ryu and the Lin Kuei. So that was really cool. Like, I really enjoyed that whole opening scene. And just cinematically, the way it was shot was really good. The fighting sequences were dope. Like, it was just really well done. That whole opening scene was great. You get a good idea of how Scorpion is as like a character, how Hanzo is, and then how Sub-Zero is, like Bi-Han. And it was great. Like, they just killed that opening.
Yeah, and I think that brings into another aspect of it, the cinematography, especially with the fighting in the movie overall, was just amazing, especially when you compare it to the original Mortal Kombat movie, which was more of a campy style. This was more realistic, more gritty. There was a lot of blood, which was kind of on the campy side, but it made sense.
Yeah, it fits in the world of Mortal Kombat. Like you said, that the campiness to the original one is great for what it is, but it just doesn't fit well within just the realm of Mortal Kombat. Like, and I love the original too, just because I grew up on that. Like, I grew up playing Mortal Kombat. So whenever I watch the Mortal Kombat movies, I'm like, yeah, they're terrible, but I love them. Like, it's just because it's Mortal Kombat. Like, so yeah, also, I guess it's a good time to say I have a huge bias towards loving this movie. Because I'm in love with the Mortal Kombat franchise. So that's like just a fair little disclaimer. Like, I don't have much bad to say about the movie, especially because when it's just compared to that original one, it's hard to complain about anything.
That's true, and I do have a long history with the franchise as well. Playing the original games on the arcade back when I was a kid, going from now, definitely a long history.
Yeah, exactly.
The one thing that I didn't like as much as the 90s movies was the music. To me, the 90s music, I guess, yeah, it was kind of campy, but in a good way, because the music gave you a lot of energy. And this movie, to me at least, it felt like the music was a little dumbed down.
I see what you're saying. I don't even feel like the original was too campy. Like, I just feel like that energy, it was just fits so well. It's just so kind of iconic that any negative I would have to say about the original soundtrack or music or whatever is just not there, because it was super iconic. And I agree, the new soundtrack, the new music it's not bad. It's they took what was the original and then they just kind of modernized it, and that made it has that, I don't know, it's kind of refined and it's not as energetic.
Right, and when I saw the first movie, I wanted to go listen to that soundtrack. I actually bought the soundtrack because it was that energetic, and I thought, hey, this is great. Now, I don't really care. I mean, I'd have no inclination into buying the soundtrack for this movie.
Yeah, it's funny you point that out. Is actually that movie soundtrack. It was just so popular. It ended up being one of the first techno, like, like some whatever, like CDs, whatever, projects to like actually chart. Like I think number one. I don't know that for sure. I heard that on Dead Meat. They were talking about it and how like that's how impactful just that movie was. That soundtrack was like massive. People loved it.
No, I definitely agree. So let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about the characters. Obviously, we have some fan favorites. We have a brand new character, and we're missing some characters. So let's start off with our brand new character.
Cole Young.
Okay, so Cole Young is the new entry, and I had read that they did that because they wanted somebody fresh, somebody new, somebody that we can relate to.
Yeah.
I personally couldn't relate to that character. Could you?
I could relate to him kind of. And I see. So I didn't read anything about the character. Like I actually went into the movie not knowing that they had, not really thinking about that like new character. It makes sense though. It's kind of how they have to do it. Um, they want someone who's relatable, at least to an extent, more so than like if you were following around Sub Zero or Scorpion. It's someone who's like has an outside perspective, and then they're coming in and getting involved with everything. I think it just helps translate that to a movie going experience better than like when you're playing the games, you're just playing the story through those characters, like through all the fan favorites, through, Scorpion, Sub Zero, all that. And that's how you get the story. But there's no real way to do that in a movie sense that makes it an enjoyable experience without introducing that new character or that audience fill in type character.
Right, and it may just be where I'm such a huge fan of the series that maybe I got into being used to seeing the story through their eyes, whereas somebody who's new comes on and watches this movie, they wouldn't have that same expectation. So I can see that being a valid point.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, like exactly. So, someone from our perspective, someone who's played the games and is used to experiencing the story through a bunch of different, essentially jump cuts and just different perspectives, that would be fine for us. For the gamer, the fan of Mortal Kombat, but for the wider audience, you have to expand that. It's the same how they do with all the superhero movies, Marvel movies, making them more accessible to not just the comic book fan.
Right, and speaking of jump cuts, the movie in the beginning had quite a few. However, I think they did the cuts to Outworld perfectly. I think they were short, to the point, and didn't distract very much with giving you that key information, as opposed to some other movies that'll go back and forth between time and you really have no idea which is which. I think they really did this well.
Yeah, and they did it well. Like you said, it's short to the point, and it was easily distinguishable. So there's no confusion. Like you don't have to question like, wait, when is this happening? Where is this happening? All that. Like the characters, even though they didn't really introduce the characters the same way they did with the Outworld characters quite the same way. They did a good job of doing that introduction, just kind of real quick, getting them out of the way, and making sure you realize the separate little plot going on, and that it's just that you're watching something in another realm that ties into the story. Like they did a really good job with that.
Right. My only real complaint with Cole, other than it just being kind of to me bland, was his powers. He got armor, he got weapons. Most other characters in Mortal Kombat get some kind of special ability. For them to just go with the safe bet of giving him armor and weapons, I feel like they went a little too short on that.
I agree, actually, because that was my thing. I was like, like, his powers, like, it's cool, I guess, but it's not memorable. That's for sure. Like, it's definitely not a memorable thing. And to kind of like sidetrack step a little bit off of like quite this, a little bit of a problem I had with this character is there's no way in hell he could beat Goro. but we'll talk about that later or whatever, I'm assuming. But other than that, like, yeah, his powers were like, yeah, I don't know, they're cool. I think it was just kind of that generic power. Like, it was just for a generic kind of character. He gets just kind of the baseline stuff. Like, I think they're kind of worried about maybe that was probably more so I can see them being worried about how the like Mortal Kombat fan reacted to it. If they were to give him something just super crazy, or even if they tried to give him something that reminded them of another character that they didn't introduce in this one. I feel like maybe that's why they did that. I don't know.
Yeah, and I feel like they just went the safe way, and
Yeah,
unfortunately, I don't think the safe way paid off for them at this time.
I think it was serviceable. It wasn't. He definitely is not the standout of the movie. Not even close.
So,
Um,
actually, Cole wasn't the character I disliked the most in this movie.
oh, really?
The character I disliked the most, and I can't quite pinpoint why exactly it is, but the character I dislike the most is Sonya Blade.
I had a feeling you were going to say that. I think it's because they almost made her a little too lighthearted. I don't know if that's what I'm looking for. So I had noticed that too. I didn't really make much of a note of it, but I did notice, like, I didn't dislike her character. There wasn't really any characters I really disliked aside from, like, I thought Cole was kind of boring, but I still liked his character overall. Like, he was cool. Like, since they tied him into Scorpion, I'm not gonna not like that. Like, you win that time. But the way they wrote her character, it's like when I think of Sonya, she's just like the ultimate badass. And yeah, she was still a badass, but her demeanor was just a little too jokey.
It was. It
Like,
was very
they tried to make
lighthearted.
her match. Yeah, they tried to make her match Kano a little bit, and I think, and that just isn't how that just didn't work too well for me.
Which is funny that you say that because Kano was a really good character in this movie.
He was amazing.
I
But
think he's definitely
I
one of
loved
the
him.
standouts.
For sure. He has so many quotable lines. And just throughout that movie, I was laughing my ass off at Kano. He's hilarious. And that fits really well with his character. I think, like, because it's in character for him to be this smart ass, just kind of talking shit all the time. Like, it's really funny. And then Sonya, she's not really, like, she has her little quips and stuff, I guess, in the game, but she's pretty straight laced. Like, her and Jax are kind of like, they have their little jokes, but they're the more kind of straight-laced badasses. Like, they're the opposite of Kano. Like, that's kind of how it always was. So I thought it was weird that she got written that way. It just felt a little off.
Yeah, no, I agree. The other thing that didn't quite make sense with Sonya's character is her powers that came instantly. So we go through the whole premise of them having to train up their powers, it taking some kind of crazy significant event after they're marked, and suddenly she shows up out of a portal immediately after getting the mark and has her powers and knows exactly how to use them.
Well, see, I thought that too when I watched it the first time, and then I watched it again today. And I remembered that scene where Liu Kang is fixing up Cole's arm after he fought Kung Lao. And he told him how he activated his Arcana. And he was like, something, essentially, he got sold to some creepy old dude that he decided to kill. And the dude had the mark. And as soon as he killed that dude, he got his powers right then and there. So,
see, that's a good point. I've missed that.
yeah, see, so they actually kind of set a precedent for that already to explain that away. Because I was curious about that too. I'm like, so Kano and Cole have to train really hard to get their powers or be, hit some sort of breaking. And then, Sonya just kills Kano, gets the mark and her powers at the same time. And then, but I caught it on the second time. Yeah, they set that precedent that it can happen if it's set up that they basically set it up that her whole goal was overcoming Kano the whole time, right? And so when she killed him and that was her breaking point, was finally killing him, she got her mark and then basically skip the training process all at once type deal.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I was curious about that at first, and I caught that when I was really paying attention today. And I was like, okay, that explains it. I have no further complaints about that, because I was like, why does Sonya? Yeah. But, yep, so that they actually did a good job explaining that, because they needed her to have her powers, but the whole time she couldn't get her powers because of, not having the mark and Kano and all that. So they actually, when you go back and watch it knowing that, or you pay attention, like if you had missed that part, they actually set up her story arc kind of nice that way. Like, he is her obstacle she needs to overcome for whatever reason. I don't know why it's him, but, and then she does and gets her powers because of it.
Well, alright, I'll give him that. What about the Sub-Zero Kano Scorpion interactions or characters? Sub-Zero and Scorpion to me seem to, and maybe my memory's just off, but it seems to have switched roles. Because I always remember Scorpion being the aggressor and Sub-Zero being the more pacifist.
See, I thought that too, and I had to kind of think back on just kind of the lore of the games a bit. I didn't actually research it. I probably should have. That would have been but I just kind of thought back, and no, it's always talked about. So Bi-Han, this Sub-Zero, is the first Sub-Zero, and he gets killed after he killed Scorpion's whole family. Like what we saw, essentially. Like they did that part pretty well in the lore. And he's the aggressor to start with. Like, yeah, eventually Scorpion is bad, ends up working with Shang Tsung and all that stuff. But at this point, no, it's Sub-Zero's actually the bad guy. I don't know. I'm pretty sure the Cole character, that whole bloodline thing, is a brand new invention for the movie, but same idea. Bi-Han dies after being the first Sub-Zero. Later on, I don't know, Bi-Han's brother or something becomes the new Sub-Zero, and then Bi-Han becomes Noob Saibot, all that fun stuff.
All right.
They also alluded to the Noob Saibot pretty hard. Like the character design of this Sub-Zero was all black. Like there was hardly any blue, and if it was blue, it was the deepest blue. Like it was borderline black. He takes off that over armor he had, that was all just black underneath, and then he's always teleporting in and out with that smoke. Like, yeah, they're setting up Noob Saibot hard with him.
Which is awesome. But overall, yeah. I think Sub-Zero did a good job. The character, yes, was the main evil character, whatever you want to call it, but he did really good at it. Scorpion also, I think, was really amazing. And honestly, I was kind of disappointed that he was used so little. I mean, it makes sense for the story, but just every time the character was on the screen, I wanted more.
And see, I see the complaint of being upset he was used so little, but I think how they used him was so effective that I'm okay with it. Like, I'm okay with seeing Scorpion, that opening scene, seeing him as a human before he's Scorpion, and then basically just seeing those glimpses of him and then seeing him come back as Scorpion. Like, I was really cool with that. I know a lot of people were really upset. They're like, they hyped up Scorpion to be like blah 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 and he's barely in it, whatever. I disagree, just because I think they used him well.
Well, see, and I think that's my only thing, is the reason that I'm so disappointed is how well they used him. It just left me wanting more.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, to be fair, that's just good movie making. They could have gave us more, but then they risked not using him well.
Right, yeah. No, they definitely messed that up.
Exactly. Like, if they just did it, no, okay, now it's more Scorpion show because they know that's the only thing people care about. Now they're just running them out. Like, yeah, that would be... I think they actually did a good job, because I'm sure it was hard not having Scorpion all over the place. Like, I'm sure they were wanting, like, maybe we should get, no, we need to, like, be Berserk. Like, because I know if I'm writing this movie, I want all my favorites just out all the time.
Oh, definitely. I think, though, unfortunately, they did reach the point of too many in this one. And for that, I give the example of the unforgettable enemy who had the hammer that Jax ended
General
up
Reiko.
destroying. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
he was barely introduced. He just, it felt like he was just there so that Jax would have somebody to fight.
I agree, but I think the reason they did that and made him so is so they didn't use a more memorable character, like a bigger, more fan favorite character, and have that, because I agree, there's a lot of characters, there's a lot going on. It's a short movie. It was like an hour 40, like, so there's not a whole lot of introduction you can do. So I feel like their use of like they tossed in Melina, they like, and Cabal. Those are the two memorable, other than Shang Tsung and Sub-Zero. Those are the memorable like bad guys, and they have that General Reiko dude who's definitely just someone for Jax to fight, but also it's someone for Jax to fight that isn't a super fan favorite that'll just be like, okay, why didn't they spend more time with this person or explore this more, blah blah blah.
Right, and I think that's the same thing with the Kung Lao fight with the bird woman. I don't remember her name either.
With Natara.
I think that sounds right.
I think Natara, Natara. That's pretty sure that's right. I agree. I think they were like, they set her up to be badass, and then she just gets fatality. They set her up. She was there just to show us that Kung Lao is a badass, but he always dies early in the lore, and there's nothing we can do about that. So,
Yeah.
like, no, Kung Lao doesn't suck. I promise. It seems like he's weird with that hat. Look what he can do with it. But we do have to kill him. It's for the story. I'm sorry. Like,
Right.
and which is fair, because I love Kung Lao, so I was really upset that he died. But then I was like, yeah, that always does happen to him. So, fucking hell. Like, what do we just gotta just accept that one and keep moving?
Yeah, but speaking of disappointing, going back to Goro, I think the way they made his character was amazing. I think
looks great.
Compared to the 90s version, it was night and day. This guy actually looked like a huge monster that I personally would cower in front of.
Yeah, he was massive. Granted, I think he was like all CG in this one. It looked good though. Like all the CG in this looks good, and I'm not a fan of CG, like ever. But you know, sometimes you have to use it. I think in the '90s one, they did him practically,
right?
Which is why he looked so funky. But it also didn't look like, it looked good, but also like it wasn't massive. It didn't look like Goro, like it just didn't fit Goro, you know. This one definitely, this was Goro. Like when I picture Goro in a movie, that is what I picture. I feel like he got wasted for this movie. I will stand by that, even though I know he's going to come back. They super lampshade everyone coming back to life in some way, or like some form, probably, whatever, thanks to Shang Tsung. But like, Goro rips people in half. You're telling me that he couldn't just instant kill Cole before he got his Arcana?
Right.
Like, that was super. I know we needed him. Like, yeah, that's plot armor at its finest. Like, I know I can't complain about we needed him, but I feel like they should have sent someone else. I don't know. They should have sent someone else after Cole, because I don't know. I don't see Goro getting beat by that dude, even with his Arcana.
One thing that did stand out for me was when he used his fire dragon. Yes. That scene was beautiful.
Was great. That shot when the dragon formed looked really good. I didn't expect to have any shots where I'm like, that looks pretty, like in a Mortal Kombat movie, but right. That shot was actually really pretty. Like, that just looked really good. Yeah, I'll just go ahead and say I was really happy with the fatality, pretty much. Like, speaking of like Kung Lao actually fatalitying, Natara, whatever her name was. Like, seeing some of the actual fatalities just getting used in full rated R gory effect was great.
It was, and I think they did it really well. They didn't overdo it, and
yes.
Every fatality was amazing. Now, they did have their punny moments, their third wall moments, or fourth wall moments, whatever you want to call them, where they would say stuff like fatality or flawless victory.
Yeah.
But it wasn't over the top.
Yeah, it works. And maybe that's just as a fan of Mortal Kombat. But, like, that just really worked for me. Because I was like, yeah, that was a flawless victory, Kung Lao. Like, Kano did win against Reptile. Good job. You did great.
All right. So, overall in the movie, if you had to rate it 1 through 10, how would you rate it?
Probably a solid 9. Just for what it is. And I'm not comparing it to other movies because I'm just rating it based on this movie. Like, my enjoyment of this movie would be a 9 for what it is. With the caveat of I'm a huge Mortal Kombat fan. Pretty big bias.
That's fair enough.
I guess it's relative to the person too. Like, if you go in expecting something that you don't get, you might be a little disappointed, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think, unfortunately, that's why I'm only going to give it an 8, in my opinion. But keep in mind that that's heavily because I had expectations, which you shouldn't have when you're watching a movie. It's just not going to work out for you. But overall, even with my expectations being smashed to the ground, it was a very enjoyable movie. Well done. I think overall, I don't really have any actual complaints about the movie. Just, something didn't go my way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, most of my complaints are kind of small, nitpicky.
So the last thing I want to hit on, you being a considerably new father, and me being a father, at what age would you let your child watch this movie?
Oof. I would, like, by the time she's like a teenager, I'm not going to be restricting any movie. She'll be able to watch any R-rated movie or whatever, especially by the time she's 13. But as far as like gore, like fighting, this may be a naive thing of me, just being a new father. But if she wants to watch it, I'm watching it. I'm not going to tell her no. Or if she even wants me to put it on for, I'm not going to be like, no. I'll be like, sure. Like, and if that comes back to backfire on me, like she has nightmares or something, I'll adjust as necessary. But as of right now, I would have no problem with her watching the movie in like a year.
Yeah, the only concern I would have is nightmares. But honestly, to me, once you get past the age of 7 or so, I wouldn't have any problem at all. This movie has no nudity. I don't even think it has innuendos.
No, the only even slightly sexual reference I can think of is when Kano tells Kung Lao and Liu Kang to suck his sack or whatever.
Oh yeah,
which made me laugh really hard.
Yeah,
and
but
even then, it's there's nothing depicted. There was no sexual stuff at all in this movie.
Yeah, and I really like that fact because I'm in kind of the same boat that you are when it comes to sexually explicit movies. That's going to be a little later down the line. But as far as gore, I think nowadays children are especially in America, are very desensitized to that.
Yes.
And so I don't think it's a big deal. So all of my children who are already above 7 would definitely watch this movie if they wanted to.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, so I guess that is our review for the new Mortal Kombat, which of course is out in theaters and HBO Max. If you haven't seen it, definitely go see it. Definitely. And Reckless, thank you so much for joining me on this.
Yeah, thanks for letting me do this with you, man. I had fun. This was great.
Absolutely. All right, well, if you guys like this video, go ahead and press that like button. Don't forget to subscribe. And let me know in the comments, what did you think about Mortal Kombat? Are we on spot with what you thought? Or do you have different thoughts? Let us know. We're always looking at those. And yeah, hopefully we'll catch you in the next one. As always, thanks for watching. You wear a hat, they call dad. Me, I'm the dad in the hat. You just like clubbing and clothes. Me, I like afternoon naps. 3, I be missed for the road. My oldest like counting racks.